The ravine wasn't supposed to be there. According to the planetary topograph, last updated 2 hours ago, the terrain beneath Rye Talver's boots should have been smooth basalt with the occasional acid-resistant scrub. Instead, it was an 80-meter vertical insult to gravity, crusted with vines, steam vents, and the unmistakable shimmer of airborne hallucinogens wafting up like it was auditioning for a music video. Which would explain, to a small degree, why he didn't immediately register the figure dangling from the root web until it waved at him and shouted, "Hello, future husband!" He blinked, adjusted his visor. "I'm sorry, what?" "Pull me up and I'll explain." The sensible part of Rye, which accounted for approximately 3% of his daily decision-making, told him to report the anomaly and wait for backup. The rest of him, a mush of decency, curiosity, and caffeine withdrawal, squatted down and extended his arm. "Grab on." She did with surprising force for someone in what looked like ceremonial armor made of silver-flecked fungus leather. Her palm clamped around his in a grip that said, "I could break you, but I won't." Yet, Rye pulled, she climbed, and the moment their boots touched solid ground together, she let out a long breath and said solemnly, "It is done." Rye stared. "What is done?" "Our bond." "Like friendship?" Her eyes, violet with shifting flecks, like galaxies arguing, narrowed with serene amusement. "No, strange one. Lifelong union. You have enacted the rite of retrieval. I am yours. You are mine. Until heat death or mutual dismemberment." Rye opened his mouth, closed it. Thought about the number of HR guidelines this probably violated. "Okay, so just to be clear, we're married now?" She beamed. "Yes, you are quick. I was just being polite. That is how many great unions begin," she said thoughtfully, then slipped her fingers between his like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. "You have a very honest palm line. Long life. Many arguments." He yanked his hand back. "Okay, listen, miss. What's your name?" "Ciara of Varelia." "Ciara. Great. Lovely. Okay. South. There's been a misunderstanding." 3 humanoid figures materialized from the trees like polite ghosts. They were tall, masked, and held staffs that glowed faintly with quantum runes. All 3 dropped to one knee in unison. "Ciara bonded," one of them intoned. "Consort savior." Rye blinked. "Nope, I don't like where this is going." Ciara leaned close, lips brushing his ear. "You're handling this well." "I think I'm having a low blood sugar hallucination." "Possible," she said, "but unlikely. We have matched resonance frequencies. Our neural rhythms are compatible. Also, you smell agreeable." He took a step back. "I use citrus-based soap." One of the masked figures stood and presented Rye with a ceremonial cloak made of shimmering heat-reactive material that changed color based on mood. It immediately turned a panicked orange and emitted a soft, "Help me" hum. "Please don this symbol of union," the attendant said. Rye held it like it might explode. "I don't want to don anything." Ciara gently guided it around his shoulders. "Too late. You already donned destiny." He looked up at the sky, where his survey drone was still blinking innocently overhead. "Please tell me this is a prank. There's a hidden camera in one of the birds, right? I'm going to be on Galactic foolery, aren't I?" Ciara tilted her head. "Is that a human mating ritual?" "No, it's... Look, I just pulled you out of a hole, and in doing so, pulled yourself into my world." She squeezed his hand again. "You'll get used to it." He was still gaping when the party of attendants began chanting softly, and a floating platform descended from the clouds. It was covered in flower petals that hovered precisely 3 centimeters above the surface. Ciara stepped aboard, pulling him with her. "Where are we going?" he asked, dazed. "To begin our union, of course." Rye groaned. "I should have let the ravine eat me." Rye tried, valiantly, to explain. He gestured, stammered, performed small, dramatic reenactments using cutlery, hand gestures, and at one point a holographic simulation involving 2 stick figures and a ravine. The result, unfortunately, was the same each time. Ciara watched with the peaceful patience of someone humorously observing a toddler try to file taxes. "We do not annul the right," she said, sipping from a cup that was steaming despite having no liquid in it. Once bonded, the threads interlace across time. Even attempting to sever them might cause a temporal feedback loop, or nausea. Sometimes both. Rye pinched the bridge of his nose. I just want to go back to the base and finish scanning Sector Delta 5 without being somebody's eternal consort. You say this every time. It's charming. He looked up sharply. What do you mean, every time? Ciara only smiled and offered him a snack from a floating tray. It looked like a sugar cube having an identity crisis. He declined. The vessel they were now traveling in, apparently a diplomatic skiff belonging to the Varelian Envoy class, was both luxurious and unsettling. Every surface shimmered with a faint bioluminescence. The walls pulsed like they were breathing. Rye was 70% sure the furniture was sentient and 90% sure the carpet had just complemented his socks. At least 5 times during the journey, an orb drifted in from nowhere, projected holograms of happy couples dancing beneath twin moons, and then floated out while playing romantic string music. Ciara, he said, is this ship trying to seduce me? Not unless you accept, but it has high matchmaking protocols. It approved of your bone structure. Terrific. That's what I always wanted in a spaceship. Judgmental taste. Before he could mount another protest, a chime sounded. The wall ahead melted away like polite jelly, revealing a landing platform bustling with Varelians in ornate robes, all gathered with ceremonial decorum. Several held banners. One featured a stylized depiction of what appeared to be him, awkwardly holding Ciara's hand while standing beside a ravine. The likeness was, unfortunately, accurate. This is your arrival ceremony, Ciara said, standing beside him. It's customary for the bonded mate to be celebrated with pageantry and a light buffet. Oh, good, Rye muttered. As long as there's food. A soft nudge guided him forward. He walked with the hesitance of someone heading into a trap set with glitter and hors d'oeuvres. As they approached the crowd, the gathered Varelians began singing in a soft, layered harmony that made his ears itch. It sounded beautiful, if slightly off in a way that suggested time itself was trying to harmonize and failing. Ciara leaned in. They're projecting blessings into your subquantum fields. You'll feel euphoric nausea shortly. I already feel that around you, he muttered. She beamed. You flirt like a Varelian. He didn't get a chance to respond. A robed elder stepped forward, solemnly raising a crystalline scepter that emitted a pleasant hum and then scanned Rye's entire body in a vertical sweep. Genetic match confirmed, the elder announced. Compatibility score, 94.8%. Wait, what's the 5.2%? Rye asked. Breakfast preferences, Ciara whispered. You prefer eggs. We incubate ours. Rye made a mental note to skip breakfast forever. A small child waddled up and handed him what looked like a ceremonial glove. But upon closer inspection was a living creature that blinked at him and fastened itself to his hand with a schlorp. Is this safe? He asked. It's a symbioband, Ciara explained. It bonds with both of us and syncs our vital signs. You'll find it ticklish during strong emotions, especially arousal. The glove blinked again. Rye felt mildly judged. I need to sit down, he said. You are seated, Ciara replied. He looked down. The platform had formed a chair under him, probably in pity, or in preparation for what came next, because suddenly the crowd parted and a new figure stepped forward, taller, clad in shimmering black, with 6 appendages and a crown of suspended orbs rotating around its head. Who's that? Rye whispered. My great-aunt, arbiter of union. She ensures the marriage is genuine. How? She'll interrogate your deepest fears. The glove tightened on his hand. I've made a huge mistake. Ciara smiled. You always say that, right before you impress everyone. The mattress whispered to him again. Your blood pressure is elevated. Should I sing to you in the voice of your mother? No, Rye muttered into his pillow. Please don't. That's deeply unsettling. A soft hum. Noted. Shall I simulate the voice of your first crush? Rye sat up fast enough to whack his head on the shelf above the sleep nook. No singing. No simulating. No psychology. You're a bed. I'm a biorest module class 9. I contain 37 lullabies and 3 preloaded memories of pleasant sunrises. That doesn't make this less creepy. Your vitals suggest you require emotional regulation. I require a burrito and to not be cosmically married to a woman who glows in the dark. The mattress went quiet. Passive-aggressive silence from furniture. Fantastic. He swung his legs out of the sleep nook and padded across the room, which promptly responded by adjusting the gravity to 0.82 Earth G. He nearly floated into a lamp, or possibly an ambient scent dispenser, hard to tell on a Varelian ship. From the other room came the unmistakable sound of someone arguing with a wall. "You are malfunctioning," Ciara snapped. "He clearly prefers savory over sweet. What kind of breakfast replicator ignores neural hints?" The wall responded in a soft trill, followed by a puff of something that smelled like spice jam and emotional trauma. Rye leaned in. "Are you fighting with the kitchen?" "She's temperamental," Ciara said, crossing her arms. Her hair had reconfigured itself into a braided crown, which Rye tried not to find impressive. "And she has a crush on you." "The kitchen?" "Yes, she says your dietary unpredictability is challengingly adorable." "I'm being romantically pursued by a room appliance." "Varelian technology is semi-sentient. It forms attachments." "Great. If the toilet starts writing me poetry, I'm voiding my diplomatic immunity." Ciara offered him a cup of something blue and fizzy. "Hydration Fizz. It stabilizes your synapses, helps with interspecies bonding." He sniffed it. It smelled like blueberries, neon, and mild regret. "How many other species have you bonded with?" "5. Rye blinked. "Wait, 5? Don't worry. You're my favorite." "That's somehow worse." She grinned, sipping her own drink. "Only one of them exploded. Accidentally." Before Rye could ask for horrifying details, the ship jolted with a subtle shift in velocity. A voice echoed through the air, rich, deep, and far too pleased with itself. "Good morning, consort savior. Did you sleep well on my spine?" Rye looked up. "Oh no, you're the ship." "I am Merle. I'm honored to host your sacred bond. Also, I have questions about your dream habits." "I do not consent to dream surveillance." "You moaned something about spaghetti law and paperclips. Intriguing." Rye rubbed his face. "Just take us to wherever we're going." "To the Varelian Embassy dock on Zekros Station, as per ceremony. Estimated arrival, 43 minutes, during which you will receive your neural sync orientation and basic consort etiquette training." "Is there an option to skip that?" "Number. There is an option to be gently shocked when incorrect." Ciara looked delighted. "It's tradition." He slumped into what he hoped was a chair and not another flirty piece of furniture. "I need to talk to a human ambassador, or a lawyer, or—" "Too late," Merle chimed. "We've already entered the diplomatic net. Your bond status has been broadcast. You are officially recognized." "By who?" "Everyone, including 3 marriage cults who just invited you to a celebratory duel." Rye groaned. "Of course they did." Ciara sat beside him, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. "You'll get used to it," she murmured. The ship purred, the chair sighed, and somewhere deep inside the console, a toaster hummed a gentle melody of longing. The moment they stepped off the ship onto Zekros Station, Rye was hit by the unmistakable scent of diplomatic anxiety. Ozone, recycled air, and something floral trying very hard to disguise political discomfort. Zekros wasn't just a station. It was a floating city, a hub of treaties and backroom deals where at least 17 species smiled politely while plotting each other's economic collapse. Rye adjusted his new ceremonial sash, which kept shifting color in time with his heart rate, currently flickering between mild panic and existential dread. Ciara held his hand as they walked. She hadn't let go since the landing. "Are we sure this is necessary?" he whispered. "You represent the union of threads," she said serenely. "You must be seen. Otherwise, the other parties will assume I hallucinated a husband." Again. Again. Never mind. They were greeted by an ambassadorial drone shaped like a floating cube with eyelashes and an unnecessary hat. It offered them both a tray of scented vapor. "For calmness," it said in a chirpy tone. Please inhale deeply or pretend to and lie. Rai opted for a shallow sniff. His vision briefly turned lavender. They were escorted through corridors that pulsed gently with transit light, past delegates from dozens of systems, tall, short, gaseous, crystalline. One delegate resembled a walking accordion. It waved at Ciara and then winked at Rai by collapsing its middle section seductively. I think that accordion just hit on me. It's a sign of respect. Unless it deflates completely, then run. They were ushered into a meeting hall shaped like a sphere bisected by gravity zones. Half the diplomats floated upside down, the other half right side up, depending on their species preferences. Rai had to recalibrate his brain every time someone walked on what he was pretty sure was the ceiling. A Varelian liaison glided forward with a diplomatic scroll that unrolled itself midair and began reading in 3 voices at once. Bonded consort, you are invited to attend the protocol of legitimacy. You will undergo challenge and review to confirm your readiness for interspecies representation. Also, there may be snacks. Rai nodded slowly. Define challenge. Tests of neural resilience, combat potential, empathy, and shared dreamscape compatibility. And a short quiz about Ciara's favorite mineral. Ciara smiled. It's zirconium. Why would I need to know that? Because the quiz is scored by my grandmother, who dreams in minerals. Fail and she'll be disappointed. In your atoms. Great. So casual cosmic judgment. Love that. The first test was a neural resonance simulation, a shared mental projection designed to expose subconscious blocks. Rai and Ciara sat in twin chairs that slithered slightly under them and lowered a silken web of biofibers over their heads. A moment later, Rai opened his eyes inside a jungle of floating fruit and upside-down waterfalls. Ciara stood beside him, barefoot, wearing a shirt that read, I married a Terran and all I got was this t-shirt and a temporal feedback loop. What is this? Your mindscape. It's messier than expected. There's a whole section labeled Awkward Childhood Memories guarded by a sentient gym teacher. From behind a tree, a man with a whistle and a clipboard emerged, blew the whistle and shouted, Get emotional! Rai groaned. This is a trap. They wandered through the dream, facing a few floating questions that materialized in glowing script. Do you trust her? Rai hesitated. Ciara raised an eyebrow. Well, she asked, I trust you to be confusing in increasingly dramatic ways. The jungle applauded. A banana exploded into fireworks. Acceptable, said a floating holographic head shaped like Merle. Proceed. When they woke, Ciara squeezed his hand. You passed. What was your score? 98. What was mine? A firm and lovable 56. So I barely passed? Number you passed adorably. Rai stood, brushing off imaginary dream dust. I'm not cut out for this alien in-law Olympics. Ciara kissed his cheek. You're doing fine. Besides, next is the empathy combat trial. He blinked. That's not a real phrase. You'll find out. The chair beneath him sighed again. So did he. The first rule of empathy combat, apparently, was don't flinch when your opponent weeps dramatically in your direction. Rai stood barefoot in a soft arena made entirely of responsive memory foam that sighed every time he moved. Across from him stood his opponent, a sleek, four-armed Varelian counselor in ceremonial robes, wielding what looked like a harp, a box of old love letters, and a puppy. State your emotional truth, the arbiter announced, floating above them in a bubble of lavender mist. And defend it. Rai glanced at Ciara, seated in the VIP gallery beside her cousin, who had somehow engineered her hair into the shape of a swan. She gave him a reassuring nod. Or possibly a signal to surrender. Hard to tell at this distance. He cleared his throat. I'm just a guy from a mining survey team. I didn't mean to marry anyone, especially not through ravine extraction. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. The puppy in his opponent's arms gave him a disappointed look. You wound with your honesty, the counselor said solemnly, strumming the harp. I counter with parental neglect and unresolved artistic ambition. A wave of melancholy hit Rai like a guilt-flavored asteroid. The arena floor turned blue. He tried to rally. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just didn't know the rules. The foam beneath his feet pulsed purple. Acceptable rebuttal, said the arbiter. Now withstand the barrage of mutual longing. The counselor hurled the puppy at him. It landed with a soft boof and immediately began projecting images of lost birthdays and sentimental rainstorms. Rye buckled. Okay, fine. I miss my coffee machine back on the outpost. I miss not being part of a space soap opera. But, he pointed at Ciara, I also miss being confused less, and somehow that's become her fault, and my favorite thing. The arena went silent. The puppy licked his ankle. The arbiter whispered, genuine emotional paradox detected. Combat resolved. Ciara clapped. Her cousin threw glitter. Later, in the debriefing chamber, where the walls change color based on the depth of your introspection, Rye slumped in a chair that turned immediately light orange. You were luminous, Ciara said, sipping tea that appeared to be partially gaseous. I cried into a dog. An honored method of release. Are all your traditions this intense? She tilted her head. You haven't even done the singing duel of future grievances yet. He groaned. Let's elope back to my habitat pod. We'll live in quiet shame and eat noodles. Ciara raised an eyebrow. You mean honeymoon? I mean running from the consequences of cosmic in-laws. Before she could reply, Merle's voice chimed through the wall. Apologies, newlyweds. There is a coded transmission from Virelia. Classified level, reality bending. Shall I display? Rye sighed. Only if it doesn't involve more tests. A flicker of light revealed a hologram of Ciara's mother, looking uncharacteristically grave. Daughter, bonded consort. The quantum seed you carry is destabilizing. You must not activate it. You must not let the collapse locate you. Ciara stood slowly, face pale. That's impossible, she whispered. The seed's dormant. Merle buzzed. Correction. Seed is partially humming. Rye looked at Ciara. Do seeds hum? Only when they're scared, she said. Well, that's comforting, Rye muttered, because so am I. The room dimmed. The puppy reappeared, holding a sign that read, You're doing amazing, sweetie. Rye blinked. Where did you come from? The puppy winked. Ciara took his hand. Things are going to get weird, she said gently. He looked around at the sentient chair, the motivational dog, the hovering arbiter still sobbing softly in the distance. Weirder than this? She smiled. He sighed. Of course they are. The escape plan began, as most diplomatic escape plans do, with an argument about socks. You can't wear those into the temporal drift zone, Ciara said, arms crossed. They're comfortable, Rye said, already halfway into his second boot. They have ankle support and anti-blister fibers. They're made of cotton polyblend. Temporal fabric hates polyester. You'll implode politely. I've imploded less politely before and survived. Ciara stared. That is not comforting. Merle, who had been eavesdropping through the wall in the form of a purring panel, chimed in. Might I suggest ceremonial toe wraps woven from harmony moss? They radiate calmness and a faint citrus aroma. I'm not wearing sentient socks, Rye said. You married into sentient socks, Ciara reminded him, and they're your in-laws now. That was how Rye ended up wearing green, humming footwear that burped when stressed. The plan was simple, or at least it started that way. Travel to the outer edge of Zekros Station, slip through an unregistered docking port, and meet Ciara's contact, a former Virelian tactician turned data smuggler who went by the name of Frinks. Apparently, Frinks owed Ciara a favor for helping him de-age his grandmother's memoirs. Don't ask, she said. It involved paradoxes and a llama. They reached the edge corridor without incident, except for a brief detour when a wall misinterpreted Rye's biometric signal and tried to induct him into the station's choir of eternal harmony. He was halfway into a duet with a soprano from the gas giant delegation before Ciara pulled him free. Frinks arrived riding a hover chair shaped like a beetle. His eyebrows existed in multiple dimensions, and his voice vibrated in alternate syllables. Ah, the couple of destiny and/or government mistake, he said. I brought snacks. Rye blinked at the tray of flickering cubes. Are they edible? They are if you believe in them, Frink said. Cool, I'll just starve. The trio slipped into the drift corridor, an unstable subspace vein that weaved between the outer docking bays like a shy wormhole trying to impress its peers. Frinks piloted the beetle chair with one toe in a sardonic whistling technique that appeared to manipulate gravity. Don't touch the edges, he warned. They whisper. Rye wisely kept his hands inside the ride. The corridor warped space like taffy, and Rye was uncomfortably aware that he could see himself from behind, waving. Past and future versions of himself flickered in and out of phase. One eating a sandwich, another sprinting while shouting, "Never trust the cheese." Is this normal? He asked. Yes, Ciara said. No, Frink said. Excellent, Rye muttered. They emerged into a secluded chamber, shielded from most surveillance nets. The walls were lined with containment crystals and motivational posters in ancient Varelian. One translated itself to, if you can bend probability, you can bend expectations. Frinks opened a small vault and produced a glowing orb. The quantum seed. It pulsed in recognition when Ciara approached, then emitted a sound suspiciously similar to a hiccup. It's waking up, Ciara murmured. But it's not supposed to unless... The collapse knows, Frinks finished. The lights dimmed. Rye raised a hand. So, out of curiosity, what exactly is the collapse? Frinks didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed Rye a crystal viewer. A hologram spun into the air, showing a timeline splitting like tree branches, then shattering into a spiral vortex. A shadow moved at the center, featureless, hungry, and loud in a way that bent thought. It's a failed timeline, Ciara said, one that became self-aware. A dead version of the universe that decided it wants custody, Frinks added. The seed hiccuped again. I think it's nervous, Rye said. Can we give it tea? Frinks looked solemn. If we don't find a way to anchor it in stable reality, it'll rupture, and the collapse will follow it straight to us. Rye nodded slowly. No pressure? The seed turned a soft yellow. Ciara took his hand. You've gotten better at not panicking. I'm just numb now. She smiled. That's almost romantic. The lights flickered again. The seed began to hum, and outside something knocked, softly on the edge of reality. The knock came again. Software polite, like a time-devouring anomaly just wanted to borrow a cup of sugar. Frinks froze mid-slurp of a translucent beverage that smelled like emotional closure. It's here. You said it couldn't find us, Rye hissed. I also said that about my third ex. Reality is full of disappointments. The walls shimmered. The seed, now bobbing gently in the air like a curious jelly bean, let out a high-pitched trill that sounded like a stressed flute solo. We have to stabilize it, Ciara said. If the seed collapses, it'll tear open the paradox seam around this sector. Everything within 10 light minutes will experience an identity crisis. I'm already in one, Rye muttered. Merle's voice crackled through Frinks's communicator. You are officially off-grid and in violation of 17 minor treaties. Also, please return my spatula. Frinks pointed at Rye. You, touch the seed. I'm not touching the humming object that can fold timelines like laundry. You already bonded with its keeper. You're the closest thing it has to a step-parent. I didn't sign up for cosmic co-parenting. You didn't sign anything, Ciara said. That's why this works. Rye sighed the sigh of a man who had once been a simple mining technician and now had in-laws in 5 dimensions. He stepped forward. The seed rotated, emitted a sound like a hopeful sneeze, and glowed in warm orange tones as he reached toward it. When his fingers brushed the surface, reality twitched. He blinked and found himself somewhere else. Not metaphorically, literally. The room dissolved. He was standing in a field of glass trees under 3 suns. Across from him stood another version of himself, older, scruffier, holding hands with a version of Ciara, wearing battle armor and a wedding veil. Well, other Rye said, about time. Rye looked around. Am I dead? Number just visiting. Temporal crossfade. You're... me? Version 12C. We made it work. Also, we have a dog. A dog trotted by. It looked suspiciously like the empathy puppy, now wearing sunglasses and a monocle. Rye nodded. Okay, sure. Why not? Older Ciara stepped forward. The collapse feeds on hesitation. If you don't anchor your bond now, this timeline folds. Rai held up a hand. What does that mean, anchor our bond? I already signed up for the unplanned interstellar marriage thing. It means, older Rai said, you stop waiting for it to be logical. You let it be true. The seed hovered between them again. It had grown, or maybe shrunk, or multiplied. Hard to tell. He took a breath. He thought about the moment he'd pulled her out of the ravine, the way she held his hand like it was a promise, not a courtesy. The fact that, against all better judgment, he didn't actually want to let go anymore. He reached for it. This time Ciara reached too. Their hands met at the surface of the seed. Reality blinked. They were back. The room stabilized. Frinks was clapping politely. Merle spoke through the wall, sounding surprised. Bond sync complete. Seed resonance contained. Spatial decay neutralized. Also, you're now legally registered as co-progenitors of a timeline node. What does that mean? Rai asked. It means, Ciara said softly, we're not just bound anymore. We're tethered to the seed's existence, Frinks added helpfully. Congratulations. You're now minor deities in a timeline that hasn't fully decided if it likes you. The seed pulsed softly. Rai rubbed his face. Do we have to feed it? Only emotionally, Ciara said. It thrives on stability, affection, and occasional sarcasm. The seed trilled again, clearly content. See, she said, it likes you. It hums. That could mean anything. It means it feels safe. He looked at her, really looked at her. So do I. And somewhere outside, the collapse paused, just for a moment, because even devouring anomalies respect a couple that can make quantum entanglement look like flirting. The first sign that things had truly changed was when the diplomatic breakfast didn't try to bite Rai. The pastries just sat there, peacefully, no humming, no glowing. Nothing tried to test his worthiness with jam riddles. He sipped his tea, real, blessedly unsentient tea, and watched Ciara calmly explain to a delegation of floating spores why her consort was now, technically, a co-anchored quantum stabilizer with limited temporal privileges and no military clearance. I can still supervise fire drills, Rai whispered to the muffin beside him, just to be sure. It didn't answer. He felt both relieved and slightly snubbed. Across the table, Ciara caught his eye and gave him a look that said, "Don't you dare poke the diplomatic fungus again." He gave her a small nod that said, "Only probably." Since their bonding with the seed, things had shifted. The collapse had retreated, for now, folded back into its wounded pocket of reality like a cat licking its existential wounds. Merle reported only minor ripples along the quantum edges, and even those smelled like cinnamon and possibility. You've stabilized a junction point, Ciara had explained the night before, curled up beside him in the sleep nook while the mattress whispered lullabies in binary. The seed recognizes you both as anchors now. It chose you. Are you sure I didn't just trip and fall into destiny again? Technically, yes, but you fell very well. They were assigned a new role. Ambassadors of entangled diplomacy, mostly ceremonial, occasionally confusing. They were to represent what spontaneous unity looked like across conflicting timelines. Rai suggested a pamphlet. Ciara suggested a space opera. Frinks came by to say goodbye, riding his beetle chair backward for flair. Don't forget to name your seed, he said. Otherwise, it'll pick one on its own. Last time that happened, it chose Emotional Barnacle 6 Zarin. They named it Fizz, because it made that sound, because it felt right, because not every cosmic artifact had to be named after a prophecy or a screaming constellation. Fizz pulsed happily whenever they were near each other. It hummed to the rhythm of their breath. It projected the occasional joke in light particles across the ceiling. Rai once caught it drawing fan art of them, stick figures holding hands in front of exploding timelines. It was disturbingly sweet. The kitchen forgave Rai for yelling at it 3 chapters ago. It offered him toast every morning now, as a gesture of truce. The empathy puppy stayed too. No one asked why. It simply lived with them now, occasionally delivering bureaucratic memos, and chewing on unauthorized paradoxes. And somehow Rai found he didn't want to leave. He stopped dreaming about going back to the outpost, about simplicity, about being alone. Shara never let go of his hand for long, but now it wasn't about ritual or obligation. Now when she reached for him, it was because she wanted to. And when he held on, it was because he finally understood what they were holding together. I used to think all of this was a mistake, he admitted as they stood before a new crowd. Ambassadors, dignitaries, confused people from humid planets. But I think maybe it was the universe improvising, and it made something good. Very good improv, Ciara agreed. 9 out of 10. Lost 1 point for sock behavior. They were good socks. They were endangered. Rai turned to the audience. On behalf of my wife and our emotionally complex space orb, thank you. We promise to only accidentally save reality 1 or 2 more times. The crowd applauded, or vibrated pleasantly, depending on their anatomy. Later that night, he lay beside Ciara beneath a sky projected from 17 star systems. Fizz glowing gently at the foot of the bed, the puppy curled up like a dream someone accidentally brought to life. I still don't know how this all happened, Rai said. You pulled me out of a ravine, she replied. That's how love stories start on my planet. He kissed her shoulder. On mine, it usually starts with a drink and a bad pickup line. You still owe me one. I'm saving it, he said. For our next timeline. Ciara smiled. The mattress sighed contentedly. Fizz hummed a lullaby in the shape of a heart. And the universe, for now, stayed wonderfully, improbably whole.